do.
I find it'd be great. Hey, everybody. It's the
Hello.
litigation update. And today, not only we have the lovely Lily Axelrod, we have the very handsome Greg Siskin, the super guapo Aaron Hall, as a couple of our folks have said. But we have a special guest today, the imminent and very government controlling Britt Simon from YouTube fame. Britt, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
This whole DV thing, which you're, of course, the expert on, we identified you as an expert. I don't think the government liked that.
They don't like me, do they?
No. Thank you very much, because you're keeping them accountable. So what's going on in DV 2022? It's a mess, right?
It's a mess. It's a complete mess. So the government just the other day published a statement saying they're halfway through. And they're halfway through scheduling, right? They're not halfway through the cases. They're not halfway through the issuances, but they're halfway through the year in terms of scheduling. And that's actually a true statement. So they've scheduled basically all of the March interviews. They have this morning, Nepal has opened up. So KDU Embassy has just taken probably north of 250 interviews for March. And I had said that we needed to see something like 3,000 interviews being scheduled in March, and actually it looks like the government are going to hit that target just today or tomorrow. So they're sort of making an effort, I think, because of your legal efforts. Frankly, they're sort of making an effort.
Well, I have a question for you. So you think they had to be around the 3,000 mark?
Yeah.
To get where?
Oh, that's not going to be 55,000.
No, clearly not, right?
No, I mean, that's gone, right? If anyone's still thinking that's a possibility.
Not even physically possible at this
point.
No,
it's not possible, no. But 3,000 a month would be about 6,000 people interviewed. We're going to lose about 20% through no-shows and refusals because the document procedure will increase those numbers, right? So we're going to lose about 20% of those. But, so you could sort of say, okay, 6,000 a month for 6 months or 7 months, actually. 6,000 people a month for 7 months. That's 42,000. Lose 20% of those. Maybe we get 35,000 plus whatever we can get from January, February, and before, right? So maybe we see 40,000. That, frankly, is my most optimistic number. Maybe 40,000.
I think that's a pipe dream, but that's just me.
I think that's
What do you make of their statements that they had been trying to front load DV 2022 to make room for the DV 2020 and DV 2020 reserved visas later in the year?
Frustrating. So there was two parts to that statement. One was that they were spending $500,000 on the necessary system changes. I think that's probably true. The estimates they gave from a technology perspective sounded sensible, and it would take about $500,000. That is separate to the front loading. The front loading statement was about the December 9th cancellation of the document procedure. And the document procedure really did screw up the process over the last 3 or 4 years or so. It was introduced in 2018. And it screwed things up. And it gave an unrealistic view. If the government is able to control the small amount of cases documentarily qualified by their slow pace on processing documents, then that makes them more likely to go current because their numbers, their calculations are based on only DQ cases, not the complete population, right? So by removing the document procedure, they yes, in theory, created the conditions to actually do something, right? To actually get on with some work, because it was clear that they were failing with the document procedure. But have they really front-loaded anything? No, not really. When that statement was made, it was shocking to see it, and then watch them do nothing in January and February, and eventually get around to doing something in March now.
And can you give people an idea of, historically, like pandemic aside, the decimation of the DV program aside, how does it go throughout the fiscal year? I mean, it's not 55,000 divided by 12, and each month gets an equal number of issuances. So how does it usually go?
Yeah, we can. You can sort of. There is a sort of a publicly available database for that. SIAC information has been interpreted. You all know that, but also their issuance data over the last since 2017 has been put on the net. So some clever, smart technology guys have taken that data and plotted that out. And what you see is that October, November, December, and this would tally with what I've seen for the years I've been doing this. October, November, December are not a quarter of the year. January, February, March, though, are pretty important, right? So the first 6 months of the year, you would normally have seen, probably, let's say, 30% of the overall visas being issued. And what's happening in those 6 months also is that a number of cases are going on to AP, which will, some of those cases, particularly in Iran, will take months to resolve, right? So then later on during the year, you see a sort of graduation going up and up and up. And then August and September are busy because they have the AP cases are being closed out. They actually do prioritize those AP cases to close them out. So August and September are normally high. So in a non-pandemic, non-Trump ban type year, that's what we see, a sort of a gradual increase. And the workload around October to December is lower, partly because of the holiday season, I think. But the start they got this year was shockingly awful. Obviously, 194 issuances. It was.
Is there any explanation for that in your mind?
I know why it happened. So the 2021, and there was a statement made about this the other day, which some people got worked up about. In late May of 2021, I noticed that they stopped processing any 2022 cases. What they did was they focused instead, because of the lawsuits in 2021, on the 2021 year. So we saw some cases being processed through DS-260 processing and document procedure fairly quickly up until about May 25th or May 27th. And from that point onwards until September, end of September, nothing else happened on DV 2022, which meant they were not ready for the October 1st start. Because they had focused, trying to make themselves look good in front of the judge, they had focused on 2021. Well, I'm glad they focused on 2021, but why is it a zero-sum game? Why is it, we had to take people away from here and put them over there? It's nuts. They shouldn't be doing that.
It seems to me that at some point in the pandemic period, they just stopped working.
Yeah.
On any case.
They definitely did that.
They just literally stopped.
Yeah. In March, from March in 2020, for at least 6 months, until the lawsuit on September 4th, when Meta gave that first order, they did basically nothing, and they suddenly then rushed and did what they could.
Well, it seems to me that, first of all, it's all electronic. Everything they do at the KCC is electronic. The documents are uploaded electronic. Nobody has a piece of paper that they're touching. So first of all, why didn't they get on their computers?
Right.
Okay, yeah, they had to work from home, but why didn't they get on the computers? It's just
right.
Here, right?
Yep.
But are we saying now that because of that 6 month layoff, they will perpetually be 6 months behind? Is that something that you foresee, or do they, or is the cancellation, basically the outright cancellation of the KCC, meant to say, okay, we're just going to try to get over that 6 month backlog by just ignoring the work that was done before?
Well, that's why they like the fiscal year cutoff, right? Because it gives them a reset period every year. They can do a shitty job in 1 year, and then they get to be patted on the head. They call them, they pat themselves on the head. They say, good job, we issued 20,000 visas. And then they get to cancel out all of the bad work and just ignore everybody that they're told were winners. And then they get to send out emails saying, sorry, that year is over because we screwed it up, right? So, that's why they like the fiscal year cutoff. They don't like the fact that you guys are forcing them to sort of open up those years to later years. That's probably, as you know, and I'm sure you probably agree, is that's the reason they're appealing, and that's what they're fighting primarily, I think.
So the only time I can think of a comparable time frame when there might have been a suspension of processing for DVs would be 2001. All right, 2001, after the attack on the World Trade Centers, there was a lot of stoppage of visa. Those of us that are older remember that. There was a lot of stoppage at the time. Have you ever gone back and looked at that and said, what did fiscal year 2002 look like for the DV lottery? Was there only 15,000 people issued, or did they somehow manage to overcome their fear, their problem, and still get close to the 50,000 number they were shooting for?
Good question. I didn't look back. The likelihood is, though, the same thing after the fiscal crash of 2008. For a while, the demand for certain things like the H-1B, lottery, for example, in 2010, 2011. I remember applying for that in 2012, I think it was, or maybe 2011. And when I applied, there was no lottery because there were not enough people applying for it because of the conditions that had happened. And I think that probably that same thing happened in 2001. There was probably a sort of a reduction of the number of people clamoring for these visas anyway. And so, yeah, I haven't looked back at 2001 stats. I will do, though. That's an interesting point. But I think it's the same thing.
What's interesting in the history of the whole lottery program, I'm old enough to have been around when the lottery started in 1991, the first year they had the lottery, 1991. And the first 3 years of the lottery that Ted Kennedy developed, this was a Ted Kennedy idea, was a third of the visas went to the Irish.
Yeah.
And by the third year, there weren't enough Irish applying for this third that was set aside for Ireland and Northern Ireland, and the modern lottery began to develop. And of course, they stopped allowing multiple applications at that same time, when initially you could literally submit 1,000 applications, and maybe you enhance your chances to get picked. So Simon, you think they may get to 35, 40,000, maybe at that?
I think they could. Do I think they will? No.
No, I don't think they will. I'm going to ask you a loaded question. Is it bad faith? In your opinion, has the Department of State acted in bad faith in these first few months, first 5 months of the fiscal year, by telling the judge, we're front loading 2022?
Oh, yeah. Clear lie. Clear lie. They haven't been at all honest in what they have and haven't done. They haven't been honest about the resources. They've geared up the KCC resources by 42%. They have, and they didn't highlight that. They just give the numbers. They haven't said why they're doing that, etc. But and then they removed the tier program, but let the embassies continue with that tier program and do nothing to stop it, even when the embassy has actually published that they're going on that tier program in writing. So yeah, what they're saying and what they're doing. Two different things. It's unbelievable, and frankly, they should be sanctioned for it.
Well, that's a good point. So our good friend Jesse Bless and his firm have already filed litigation. We're preparing our litigation to file this week. But you hit upon the key points of that litigation. The visas that are not going to be used are not going to be used because they weren't doing their job. I mean, they were not acting in good faith, because they also clearly were not doing. They weren't. We better get these DV 2021 and DV 2020 cases loaded up so we can. They weren't doing anything on that as far as we can tell, right? There's no data published on that, so we presume they did nothing on those cases. So we need. Our goal is to recapture 5 months of visas.
Right.
They just didn't issue any. 1,000 in the first 4 months. It was a giant nothing burger. But also to go after them on not working in good faith. That's the thing that Judge Mehta has always been focused on. If you could call the other piece of litigation, there's COVID, and he kind of balanced out, we look what they did for immediate relatives. And he kept comparing these immediate relatives. Now, a couple of the flaws with that are, first of all, immediate relatives, whether you take a year or a month or 6 months or 2 years, they're still going to get their green card. It's still going to happen.
Right.
If you don't get the DV done by September 30th, you're not getting it. I mean, that's one key difference. And two, this year particularly, they are above at this stage, right, Aaron? They're above pre-pandemic immediate relative processing, while going to the prioritization, the illegal prioritization that Judge Mehta has said is illegal. They're just saying we don't care about DVs. We just don't care about DVs.
Yeah.
In fact, in their most recent filing, they even said DVs aren't important.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're absolutely right. They've burned through 5 months and did nothing, and that will cost us at the end for sure. And there will be, even if they do, a fantastic job now and they schedule at least 3,000 cases a month, that's not going to get us to 55,000. And there are 119,000 selectees. So even with people that say, yeah, I won the lottery, but I was just, I'm not going to pursue that. There must have been about 80,000 people out of the 119,000 that want the visas, right? So there were more than enough people with the way that Judge Mehta tried to do the calculation before. There were more than enough people to use up the 55,000 visas, even allowing for, people being refused at interview and all that sort of stuff, right? So, yeah, they've wasted that opportunity. They've cost us. They've cost us all. It's a mess.
Did it surprise you that they picked 115,000 again as opposed to picking 90 or 80?
They're kind of they seem to be a couple of years behind. So I saw them for many years pre-pandemic. They were doing 2 years of over-selecting, then 2 years of under-selecting. 100,000 is about the sweet spot, right? With 100,000, it's about right. But you never quite know what the global conditions will be, what wars will happen here, what political instability. It's COVID, obviously, right? So the reason they over-select is partly, I believe, for that. But in roughly half of the years that I've tracked, about 20 years of the DV lottery program, half of them have cutoffs for some countries, some regions rather, where there is not all regions being current. That's what it was like pre-pandemic. The only reason that it went into a sort of all regions go current was because of the document procedure and the pandemic, right? So the document procedure by itself would have screwed that up, actually. We saw that happen in 2019. It was a mess then. So
I'm sure they thought it was a really good idea. I'm sure they thought the document procedure, hey, why don't we pre-prepare these people so they go to the embassy and the consular officer can just zip through an interview? My experience is they didn't change the length of the interview at the consulate.
I don't think it was designed to speed things up for the COs. I think it was designed to keep bad cases out of the consular officers' hands in the first place. Like, just put an extra barrier in front of people. But it was so badly organized. I spoke to the KCC management about it once, and they literally had two departments, and the two departments weren't allowed to talk to each other. They were run by two different people. So you would call the only people you could call, and they had no idea what was happening with your case because they were not allowed to ask the other team. So, it's just really badly implemented. The fact that they removed it, by the way, on December 9th is a clear admission that they realized how they screwed things up, right? And that's an important point from a legal point of view. They had caused that damage, and they were smart enough, if you want to put it that way, to realize they had to remove that to have any chance. Okay, that's an admission of what they've been doing to the program for the last 2 or 3 years, and that they couldn't get to the end properly if they still had the document procedure in place.
Britt, do you have any idea how much they were spending at the KCC on the DV cases? I mean, what component, what part of that budget? Because I mentioned this only because they've recently made a claim to stay the DV 2020 and 2021 cases, that they're going to lose $500,000 by implementing the budget. But they clearly must have spent far more than that at the KCC, which just screwed everything up.
Yeah, the program is supposed to be self-funding. When it was implemented, the cost of KCC, the reason it's handled by LDRM, is that they can plausibly deny that as being a sort of a federal budget thing, right? It's self-funded by the $330 at the at the embassies. So it doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't cost the government anything to run this program. It's self-funded. So, and if it's not self-funded, it's because of their bad math. So they can't claim anything in terms of it costs us money to do this work. And the $500,000, they spent it. It's already committed. They should be completing that work. I'm in technology. They should be completing that work.
I was going to ask you about, you're a tech guy, all right? This is what you do in your real job as opposed to
my real job.
DV stuff. $500,000 to make sure you could issue a visa that's backdated. I'm not a tech. That just seems really expensive to change a couple lines of code.
That was my question. What are we getting for $500,000?
Yeah, what's happening? What are they doing?
They're modifying. They've said they're modifying 5 systems. It sort of makes sense. They got the systems like IVAMs and the is it Frog or whatever it is. They've got various systems that control the process. It sort of makes sense. I can tell you $500,000 is not a lot of money in tech. Tech world. So if they really had to have a small team working on this for 3 or 4 months, $500,000 would go in a heartbeat. it's not a lot of money. And because you've got 5 separate systems, it makes sense. I wouldn't question the $500,000.
I think we just assume, why don't you just hire an H-1B to get in there and fix that problem for you?
It'll take several H-1Bs, but yeah, they probably have. But those H-1Bs, although they're only earning, I don't know, 80, 100 grand a year, they're being charged by their companies who are, much more than that, right?
We know what those companies are charging those guys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
Aaron had fallen off for some reason. There wasn't a nuclear explosion in Denver or anything, was there?
I got kicked out. I'm back.
I had a question. So, the government and the judge made in his calculation for the number that he came up with, he used this COVID factor, basically giving a discount essentially of how many cases should be adjudicated because of COVID. And my question for you is should that be a factor anymore? Have enough processes got back to, a level of normal that shouldn't be figuring in anymore in any calculation that's done for DV 2022? Or is COVID still, I don't know if you think it was ever a legitimate reason for fewer adjudications, but what do you think's changed since 2020 to 2022 as far as processing goes? So, when the judge is coming up with whatever formula he's coming up with, what would be appropriate this year versus previous years?
Are you for the appeals or for 2022?
I'm just saying, if we win this case and the judge has to come up with a number at the end when for a reservation of visas like he's done previously, the formula, and Chuck, I don't know if it was ever specifically stated sort of like how he came up with that, but the formula gave essentially a break based on what would have, if they were doing everything in good faith and they weren't doing the prioritization, they wouldn't have been able to adjudicate all 55,000 because of COVID. There wasn't a complete reservation of all the unused numbers. It was a partial reservation.
That excuse disappeared a long time ago. It was, I personally believe, I had personal impact of the COVID virus. It was a real deal, and it is a real deal. And for a while, it affected everything. March 17th, I went home from my office and haven't returned since. And technology workers the world round and all sorts of people have changed the way they work. And, I'm sure you're all experiencing the same thing. So, yeah, there was a real thing. But we can look at the numbers. It's not like we don't have the data. We can look at the immigrant and non-immigrant adjudications around the world at all the embassies. And actually, we've got that data for you in a nice visualization by a smart guy called Noyan. And you'll be able to see that, exactly as you said earlier, they're back to either pre-pandemic levels in terms of adjudications at most embassies or above that. They're actually doing more than that, right?
Because they have to.
They've just sacrificed TV.
They have to get the backlog done, so they have to do more.
Yeah. So Riyadh Embassy, for example, had an average of about 100 immigrant visa issuances prior to the pandemic, right? Per month, an average, roughly. I can show you the data. They're now doing, the last 2 or 3 months, they're doing about 150 immigrant visas and almost no DV. DV had been half of the 100 a month pre-pandemic, and now is none of it. Or in January, up to January, was none of it. So, how can you be doing more of those things, more than you were doing before, and try and claim that the DV COVID is stopping you?
I think what's clear from their most recent filing is that COVID is no longer stopping it. They just no longer consider DV a legitimate visa.
Correct.
They don't consider it a legitimate visa. By the way, I did find some data in fiscal year 2002, which started 3 weeks after 9/11. We admitted 43,000 DV people.
Wow.
And in a year in which we were going bananas about security and terrorism, and the world shut down for weeks and weeks and weeks, still admitted over 85% of the DV visas for that year.
Right.
I think we may put that in our filing that we'll be making on Friday. We're going to sue on Friday, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We're excited about that.
Awesome. So is the sign-up date cut off now for your suit, or can people still sign up?
People can still sign up. And you can go to impactlitigation.com. Chuck, I don't know if you have the address.
There you go, right there.
Yeah, people really need to understand the impact of lawsuits and the importance of lawsuits. There may be. I'm pleased you guys are doing lawsuits again, because there is a general benefit, I believe, of lawsuits in getting the government to do some stuff. But we've also seen that only plaintiffs in some cases will get true benefit. When people ask me about 2020 and 2021, my instant answer has to be, unless you believe in Meng 1 and 2, coming through in the BBB or some other way, basically, if you're a non-plaintiff in 2021, you're done. In 2020, thank goodness, you were covered under Gomez typically, but for 2021, you're done. And that's the price of thinking you don't need to be on a lawsuit. Not wise.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to going back. We will, of course, advise the court in our filing of related cases. These are clearly related to the Go case that we filed in the Acker and Gomez case previously. And we'll see what the court in D.C. does to assign the case. I don't know if Jesse's case has been assigned to a judge yet. I'm sure it has. I just haven't heard who that might be at this point. But it wouldn't surprise me if it's in front of Judge Maida again. Not that
he's filed in Kentucky.
Oh, he filed his in Kentucky. Well, good for him. We will be filing in Washington, D.C.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's really, really important because that's where the state's really going to fight this. Simon, the government's trying to stop, just to briefly talk about DV 2021 and DV 2020. The government has filed stays in both of those cases.
Chuck, you want to throw up a banner? Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. I'm going. I knew we'd be getting that. And the GomezAcker 2020 case, we're going to throw Acker in there, even though it's part of Gomez. And even though we only have 2 plaintiffs left, Simon, we only have 2 plaintiff families, 11 people left. And all of other clients got their green cards. They all got them that September. So
there was the class in Acker, though, that was never certified, right? Which was the people that were issued visas prior to March and then weren't able to use them.
That's a separate thing that we are still waiting for clarification from Judge Maida on, and we will be putting in our response. We're filing to this day.
There are people that are waiting for that news.
Yeah, absolutely. And in these 2 cases, government has filed for a stay. Our response is due next Monday. We're likely going to file it this week. When the government, when they file a stay, you have to ask opposing party, what is your position on our stay? I was actually on vacation in Hawaii, and I was enjoying the tranquility of the sounds of the ocean. And on a Friday afternoon, the government said, "Hey, we're filing for a stay. Screw all your clients. Do you agree?" And my response perhaps was somewhat aggressive. Somewhere in the neighborhood of hell no.
Tweet-worthy.
We're going to file for sanctions because of your bad faith. And then the government included my email in their filing. Thank you. Now Judge Maida knows where I stand. That's great. So we're going to file a very aggressive response to that because we think it's wildly inappropriate to screw people like this. And the most terrible thing about that, I thought, was plaintiffs aren't harmed. No plaintiff. We have received emails from people detailing that their failure, the Department of State's failure to interview them and issue the visa, literally destroyed their lives. And I know Curtis has said, literally had clients die. Their clients die. How you can? We're going to lose $500,000.
Right.
The thing was, well, what if we issue the visa and then we win the appeal? Well, I guess some people got green cards then. Oh well, the world's not
ours.
Yeah. So,
and how exactly is the government injured by admitting DV? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
They would
have
because the only reason they didn't get the visa was because of your incompetence. Even if the court says you can't reserve visas, you still did a terrible thing to these people.
Yeah.
So, it's really the chutzpah of them making that argument is quite.
I don't know how these people can sleep at night. Honestly, this is why I can never be a lawyer for the government. Because you gotta present these crap arguments to destroy people's lives. I just don't get it, unless you truly believe it.
Well, I don't think that they truly believe that they have been working on front loading these cases. That's going to be, I think, probably the most interesting aspect, I think, of how we respond is how we treat that. I agree, it's a clear lie on there, and it was pretty shocking that they would make that kind of statement.
I was stunned by that. I mean, it was just absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
But they know Judge Maida's not going to grant their stay. He already denied the stay, basically in oral argument. I mean, when Greg and I were there, they said, "Well, Judge, at least say we don't have to do anything for 2023." It's like, no, you're not going to grant this stay. What they're doing is they're setting it up for the Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
Where they have, I don't know who the panel that will hear this case will be. We're going to try to get it to be the panel that was originally assigned to the first appeal they made, which they then withdrew.
Right.
Because that was a really great panel for us. And they may go to SCOTUS. They may literally pull a Trump and go all the way to the Supreme Court to try to stop this. And I would, we keep talking to the press, and it's important that Americans know what is being done in their name by the Biden administration. I mean, it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, great piece by some great quotes from Aaron on the Stuart Anderson Forbes piece the other day. That was
great. Stuart's a great. He writes great stuff in Forbes.
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah.
It just tells you where Forbes is coming from on this stuff. They get it. They get it.
Yep.
Do we have any more questions for Simon today? Well, let's take a look and see if there's any comments here that Simon could answer.
I've been answering some unrelated.
You've been answering some.
About...
Thank you, Trey. Go here. Ask sanctions on the government. We are researching, asking for sanctions for this. Yes, we are.
And what does sanctions mean for folks who are not?
Sanctions means that the government should pay a fine to somebody, to the court even, for their actions of bad faith here.
So that's not just we disagree with you and we think that you're
you
making a bad legal argument, right? It has to be beyond.
Yeah, this is what you've done here is mean and evil and without basis in fact or law. Maybe I win it or not. I don't see we lose anything by trying that. But I do think Supreme Court may be getting there. Let's see. Jason Claude. Oh, by the way, Jason is one of our K1 plaintiffs in Manila, and he just got his case transferred. If you're not filing, Simon, you're all into the DV, but K1 fiancés have been screwed by this too.
Yeah, no.
So congratulations, Jason. Will he stay 2020 or not? I don't think the judge Maida's not going to. I don't think he's going to do it. I just don't know what the Court of Appeal is going to do. MNL, which I think is Montreal.
Manila.
400 K1s. Cool. Well, I didn't know it top of my head. Why did I think that was Montreal? Montreal's MTL.
They're not into the DV game at Manila.
Yeah. And so we got Vulcan, AOS, family preference, how long to take EID, a green card. That totally depends, my friend, on where you are. Depends on where you are in the world. Lily answered that question. Thank you, Lily. Just in case, the lottery started back the first seasons of Law and Order. That is
great
true.
Reference
Law
point.
and Order is a great show. Simon, do they have a version of Law and Order in the UK? Because all our
They
best
do.
shows
I've seen it.
Yeah, they do.
It's on that.
Don't
BBC America.
There's some really good cop shows over there.
That they do. Fofana Mem. Is there any change to the expired visas? No. But in our response to the government's motion for stay, we will remind the court that we have a motion for clarification pending with the court on their original order. So we'll go from there. One of the things we learned from all our litigation is you can't force a federal judge to make a decision. You can't file a mandamus against the judge in federal court. So we can't do that. So you just got to up to them. Kumar is happy to see you, Simon. There you go. And you already answered this. Simon answered this for us. Can the lawsuit benefit non-plaintiffs? Well, that's interesting. We are going to ask the court to reserve the visas that were wasted. And then it's wasted is actually I think it's a technical legal term when they intentionally allowed them to expire or intentionally don't use them. That's called wasting. It's not like throwing garbage in a garbage can. Well, it's kind of like that. So we're going to ask that they be unwasted by the judge and distributed. But it's the plaintiffs that we're seeking their particular interviews as long as they're current. Oh, this is what I wanted to ask you, Simon. You mentioned earlier that the KCC basically forced rapid advancement of the visa bulletin such that it became current quicker than it may have otherwise. What do you anticipate this year, given the evaporation of the KCC's involvement on documents in regards to the visa bulletin and visa advancement?
The same math should be applied. So Charlie Oppenheim and I had a bit of an email conversation about how he calculates the DV numbers. And it's
by the
basically,
way, I would pay money to read those, by the way.
I'll publish it.
Nobody understands that. Nobody understands.
I just wanted to confirm what I assumed to be the process, and he did. He confirmed what I already understood. But basically, it's about cases will get documentarily qualified, whether it's by producing documents or whether it's by only submitting the DS-260. Either way, you become ready for scheduling or documentarily qualified, right? It's a status, not to do with documents. And so those numbers, DQ cases, is what the KCC reports to the visa office. And then Charlie was saying that they take demand, the demand based on DQ numbers, and they take capacity / the work they want to do, as he put it, and they put those two things together. So mathematically, there's no way we should be going current. There's not enough time. There's too many visas. There's too much demand, and they've just made it much easier to become documentarily qualified. So there's no way they should do it. The only way they would do it is if they were trying to react to lawsuits or trying to show the judge they're doing good. But the reason the last VB had almost no movement was because they just made a bunch more people documentarily qualified by reducing the bar. And that's why they didn't have to move the VB at all. I predicted it the day before it came out. So it's understandable. They are working, to the understandable methods.
So let me jump in on Osama's question and add a little bit more. Question being, can your lawsuit benefit non-plaintiffs in any way? It's kind of a nuanced answer, because if I had to say yes or no, the answer is yes. Why? Because when the government gets sued and they know that they're going to be challenged on these numbers, they have an incentive to try to make the numbers look better as the year progresses, because they know they're going to be defending this against in court. And then, just as an example, in DV 2021, the September 9th order, where Judge Mehta agreed with our arguments and ordered them to actually start processing the visas in good faith, it benefited all selectees, not just plaintiffs. But then we get to the September 30th order, and its benefit is limited to plaintiffs only. No. And so certain parts of litigation benefit the whole program, and we're happy about that. But ultimately, to have the greatest chances of benefiting, you have to be a plaintiff. Otherwise, you don't know whether the judge is going to limit relief to plaintiffs. And ultimately, our main concern is for our plaintiffs, and that's who we're going to be fighting for visas for. So while we're happy that other people might benefit, ultimately we're concerned about our plaintiffs' prospects.
Aaron, the other point of that is that even before the September 9th order in 2021, the switching of resources at KCC to work on 2021 cases rather than 2022, that was also a reaction to the lawsuits. There was no order at that point, but it was trying to make the cases look better, before any order comes. So it's not just waiting for the order that matters.
This is why I would love to have an actual trial with witnesses as opposed to doing motions, because it's really hard to convey what really is going on behind the scenes and on just paper. But unfortunately, we don't really get to do that in these kind of cases. But I would love to, put the head of the KCC on the stand and say, I have some questions for you. What do you actually do? That would just be so much fun. That would just be great. Salmon asked if we could use initials instead of full names in the litigation. I want to join, but I want to find my name. I'm litigation. Aaron?
No, the minors do that, but no. When you come up and sue the government, except in certain circumstances, you're going to be it's public. Now we don't. We're not going to go around sharing names and addresses of our clients any more than we have to. But we would tell people that they should expect that their name will be attached to the lawsuit.
Yep. Okay.
And when we post anything on any of our pleadings, we will redact we will redact all the personal information out.
I do want to talk about the EAD delay case. Aaron, you are popping on that baby. Tell us about it.
Yeah, last night we filed our motion for class certification, and I spoke with the government attorney about it yesterday, and we had a little back and forth, and he basically said, okay, if you're filing that motion, I'm filing a motion saying we want to stay the briefing on the class certification. And so they did file a motion to stay the briefing. We opposed it, but the motion for class certification was filed. It's not stayed as of yet, so they have 14 days to respond to our motion. And at the same time, we are waiting on a decision from, this is Judge Leon. We're waiting for a decision on the motion to dismiss or transfer. And speaking for myself, I feel very good about our prospects on that.
I do too. So that's where we are, and we're still fighting that. I think we only have 20 of our plaintiffs. I think most of our plaintiffs, I think at this point, probably gotten the ADs. But the outrageous part, those that haven't have been waiting over a year. I mean, again, this is just, how can you justify this as an agency to say, you can only apply 6 months before expiration, but we're going to take a year to renew it. I mean, they did announce yesterday that they're going to issue EADs for 2 years in different, not every case, but in different specific cases. And
only a couple of cases, though.
But they're in the categories.
Not the vast majority of people that are waiting.
Right, not the vast majority waiting for this. But in the cases like asylum, which it takes 8 years to get an asylum interview, instead of reviewing every year, it's every other year. 42B cases.
That's been 2 years. It's like for asylees people who have been granted asylum who don't even need an EAD to work.
Right.
It's like, that's a whole lot of nothing.
If there was the minimum they could do, they did just barely more than that. Isn't that what they did with that?
Yeah, I mean, they've already done.
They have such a fear of somebody having an EAD that's unexpired and then the benefit gets denied. That's what this is all about. The reason why they won't do it, as opposed to just simply, revoking the document.
I think it was David Beer who said on Twitter the other day, why can't we just issue EADs without an expiration date, which is what they used to do for LPR cards, for the green cards, because your green card status does not, in fact, have an expiration date, just the card does. But exactly as Greg says, they're this fear of, what if someone is able to get a job after their underlying status expires? Apparently is a bigger risk to the economy than
shortage of workers in probably the last 50 years, and they're panicked that somebody might be working that shouldn't be.
Right, as opposed to all of the harm to people who want to work and can work and have a job and can't work at that job.
Except they're doing no immigration enforcement by ICE of employers. There was a big article, I think, in the Post or the Times yesterday about in Alabama, some factory employing minors on fake documents. It's like, we're going to be opposed to it, but we're not going to do the right thing in the long run.
Meanwhile, some of the folks I'm still getting calls from folks who were detained in that big Mississippi raid, which was 3-4 years ago now. I mean, those are still in removal proceedings in Memphis, these cases. It's wild.
Joe Puccini said he matched up in the USA stuff. We agree. We'll get you over here. Mabaksha is the one I mentioned earlier that they had issued about 4,000 400 K1s, and they're still far behind. Yeah, I mean, we understand it's a problem. We have a lawsuit pending on that, but we just don't have a decision from the judge. We're just literally waiting, and we are literally hamstrung at this point on doing that.
And we're as frustrated as you are. I mean, I get your emails saying I joined this lawsuit, and I think we were realistic at the beginning that we were hopeful that the judge would see how bad it was in Manila and take quick action. But and so we are angry that hasn't happened. I don't want to seem like we're being dismissive that there's an ongoing injustice here for some of our plaintiffs. Quite a few of you have gotten processed, and please keep sending me your wedding photos and your reunion photos. I love that. But
Omar Foe is a DV 2020 winner, rejected under the Muslim ban in Sudan. That's going to have to be, I think, I think you'd be eligible under the 9,095. If I was you, I'd be registering with the Gomez class to get a bite at that apple again. I make sure you go online to just Google Gomez DV 2020 and their registration page comes up. I would definitely do that. But absent something like the Meng legislation, I mean, that's your only option. This is actually just great. It's a great question, Aaron. A really good question. So the government could just settle with the other lawyers and let people get wasted? And wasted is spelled incorrectly, but I'm not going to correct you about that. But yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the government came to us and said, after we filed this lawsuit and said, we're going to process all of your plaintiffs and then you'll dismiss the suit, we would say, sure. So yes.
We have to. We can't.
Yeah.
We're not going to risk that our clients or our plaintiffs are not going to get their green cards.
And that's not because we don't care about the bigger picture, right? We're doing this to help our clients and because we think that we want to participate in fixing this injustice, but we have ethical obligations to our plaintiffs, and it's their decision whether to accept a settlement. And if the settlement is good for our plaintiffs, that's ethically our first priority.
Yep. All right, Frostman, you guys think these appeals will go to SCOTUS? Well, SCOTUS doesn't take every case, right? If we win at the 11th Circuit, I would not be surprised at all if state insists on appealing to SCOTUS. I hope they don't because, oh my God, that's so much work. it's just so much work. But I don't know why SCOTUS would take this case. It's just not that important. It's just not that important as far as the big overall scope of the law is concerned. Unless they want to talk about consular non-reviewability, and then I would be happy to go to the Supreme Court about that case. Let's see. Lucy the Maverick, as U.S. indicate how they plan to offload the EBQs stuck at TSC. This kind of harkens back to our Chakrabarty litigation. Now, the USCIS has promised they will use all 80,000 EBs this year in all the categories, which would be great for people that are Indian, because Indians are going to get like 200,000 of those visas if it's done the right way. No, they have not said how they're doing it. But Lucy, I think this harkens back to something Simon said as far how Department of State uses DVs.
Lucky now.
They get about 30% done in the first 4 or 5 months, and then they really get to work. I think the same thing is going to happen. Keep in mind, CIS is also hiring at a very rapid rate. They have to hire, onboard, and train. That's probably a 4 to 5 month process for people. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see a flood of approvals come June, July, August, and September is what I'm thinking is probably going to happen. Okay. Let's see. Our friend CB Man thinks it was a giant waste of money to sue the K1 lawsuit because the judge is ghosting us. And I disagree. First of all, I think it did force the consulate to issue visas when they might normally not have had to. Just not
quite a lot of our plaintiffs. Yeah, quite a lot of our plaintiffs actually have had their visas issued. Right. I understand that means nothing to those of you who are still separated from your spouses, but I do think that
it's outrageous. And we are doing everything we can legally under the law to try to get that moved. But I appreciate you putting that out there because I certainly feel that. Runal, H1B lottery abuse. Now, the H1B lottery abuse case, our other case we're going to talk about today. Let's make sure that I put that banner up here because I don't want to get Lily mad at me. Chuck, we didn't put the banner up. H1B lottery abuse case. So, Simon, if you don't following this issue, the Department of the Immigration has a really odd way of conducting a lottery for the limited number of H1B visas. I'm sure you're familiar with the H1B visa, very prominent in the tech field, with only 85,000 available. And they changed it a couple of years ago to let employers, instead of filing a whole application, to pay $10 and register as an employer to hire somebody. And that employer can only file one registration for that particular employee. So it avoids an employer filing 1,000 applications for one person. But an individual can have a dozen employers, 100 employers file for them, regardless of whether those legitimate job offers.
And guess what happened?
Yeah.
Shocked, right? So we like to refer to this as the H1B raffle. That's going on. Get to your local church and get that Afghan
$10 ticket. That's all it takes.
$10 ticket. So we sued, and we are actually at motions for summary judgment. In that case, we have now finished briefing. We have on Friday night we filed our joint appendix, and we're literally waiting now for a decision. Now, the judge has not set oral argument. We don't know if he's going to have oral argument. I hope he does have oral argument because I'm kind of passionate about this issue. And we'll see what happens. But the judge knows and has publicly acknowledged that all the parties would like a decision by the end of February. Now, we might win, we might lose. I think we've got a really good case. But one thing is, though, is we have already made progress. And this goes back to, why do you sue, Simon? There's other benefits, maybe not necessarily to the plaintiff, but to the plaintiff indirectly, and that's this. In this year's employer registration, they added a paragraph. And the paragraph says, for the employer to sign under penalty of perjury, I am not aware of any other employee or employers who are filing on behalf of this employee to improve their odds in getting picked in the lottery or language like that. Now, our good friend Angelo pointed that out to me, Angelo Pepparelli, and he said, what's the big deal? Well, actually, there is a big deal because most of these companies that are filing for people and are actually advertising, hey, we'll file for you, they know. They have actual knowledge that employee is only coming to them because they want to improve their odds, because they generally don't even have a job for them. They're mostly job shops. Right. So we'll see what immigration does. That was added in this year's lottery, and only because of the lawsuit. So we'll see if that has any impact. But again, in the first year they did this, there was 260,000 applicants. Last year there was 310,000 applicants, registrants, and I'm sure this year 350, 400 million. Who knows how many? So we'll see. That's the H-1B lottery case, and I would anticipate that within 20 days we will have a decision from the judge. So that's kind of where we are on that. And Monroe also asks about the fourth lottery. February 23rd is the end of the 3-month registration period from the third lottery, the third selection period. Has USCIS announced that they've received enough applications?
Nope.
No. Have they run out of H-1Bs? No. I would hope that the judge waits, and he may be waiting because we pointed out in our brief that February 23rd is the last day to submit applications. So maybe he'll wait and see what the government announces on February 24th, whether they're going to have a separate lottery.
So, they had so many people that were doing this beneficiaries that were filing massive numbers of applications that when they do the lottery, they end up picking people who've already been selected previously. And that's why they keep having to do a second and a third lottery, and they'll have to do a fourth lottery now for the fiscal year that started already. So
crazy.
All right, we love Yana. Watching the final season of Game of Thrones.
I'm not sure that's a compliment.
I don't know. Who am I? Who do I get to be? I want to be Jason Momoa. I want to be the big guy. I want to be the mountain.
I have bad news for you about the final season because no spoilers, but he sure isn't in it.
I'm the dragon.
EBQ litigation, we just updated that life monitor apart as well. Case of a plaintiff gets an interview before September 30th. I assume this is for a DV lottery. But being sent to administrators over there, does the lawsuit help in the situation to save the visa if the judge reserves visas? Yes. So we know that there were there were several Go plaintiffs at least that were in AP and did not get approved by September 30th. I know that. So would they be one of the ones to get the visa? I would imagine so. But what we don't know, Simon, is what does the department, what did the department say do? In previous years, if you were an AP and then
you're done,
it's gone. They're over.
You're done. Yeah.
I don't know what they did for 2021 and 22. I don't know.
It depends on the plaintiffs on the lawsuits, right? On Gomez.
Yeah.
If you're in Gomez, I think you've got a chance. If you're in Go or Good Luck, you've got a chance. But other than that, you're done.
Okay. Team Gab, the general update on K1s is there's no update on K1s. None of the judges have said or done anything in any of those cases at this point. In response to what I thought was a pretty aggressive filing by yours truly in dismissing plaintiffs who had gotten their visas, I mean, I was as aggressive as I felt comfortable being in there to kind of nudge the judge along there. So, okay.
I gave a little general update in the comments in reply to that question, but basically almost all of our Moscow plaintiffs, I think, have received their visas. Oh, right now they're there. Same with London, and then as those of you in Rio and Manila know, they're being processed.
I think we were down to like 2 Moscow plaintiffs, weren't we? That were in our last.
I have to check with James as tracking those, but almost all have been interviewed in Warsaw or other.
Let's touch base later, Lily, and find out if we just need to dismiss the case. I mean, maybe they've been approved.
Check out our
H4 EAD premium processing, Greg. This is Greg's favorite question. He gets this every week. And the answer this week, Greg, is
nothing imminent. But they have issued the report that was required under the law that passed that allowed them to do premium processing. So I am guessing that I'm still sticking with my April-May timeframe.
They're going to need that extra money to pay all the people they're hiring that they're going to get from this. And our last comment, Renal, all the best. Thank you, everybody, for tuning. Simon, thank you. A special, massive thank you for joining the gang here today.
Thank you for having me on.
And thanks for all the time that you take on Twitter answering folks' questions and keeping all of us updated on, the ins and outs of what's going with DV all over the world. I know thousands of people appreciate your work.
Thank you.
I would make sure to follow him on Twitter at Brit Simon.
Yes.
And you definitely want to watch him on YouTube as well.
And
now U.S. citizen Simon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations.
The government lawyers didn't turn up to stop my citizenship.
Congrats.
Chuck, I'm going to be on it in roughly an hour, and I'm going to be devoting my live stream today to talking about the America Competes Act and what's in it.
Everybody tune in to the Siskin Susser live stream today. Now, Greg, you're going to be on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, right? Aren't you going to blast it out there?
I will be in multiple places.
So watch out
with all that list, but I will give a deep dive rundown of what's in that bill.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.